Herzliya Conference 2012. Special interviews, highlights, and live broadcasts on IDC Radio.
Mr. Arik Bachar, Secretary General of the Israeli Press Council. Thank
Hello.
you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Bachar, is it dangerous to be a journalist in Israel those days?
Well, it depends on what is your beat. I mean, if you cover the West Bank, probably more dangerous than covering the Knesset in Jerusalem. But it's dangerous because the legal minefield that the average Israeli journalist has to navigate these days is getting more and more complicated because we've been inundated with quite a number of mostly private members' bills trying to limit the scope of journalistic freedom. The most recent case is the dramatic rise in the penalties stipulated in a number of laws, especially the libel laws that apply in Israel that have been enforced since the mid-80s, and now the penalties have been increased sixfold.
Can you tell me a little bit about the connection between the council and the government in Israel?
Well, there's no connection as such. We operate totally independently of the state and government. This is a self-regulation organ that was established by the Israeli media, mainstream media, as far back as 1963. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year. We rely solely on contributions for our members. These could be newspapers, internet media, and so on. Television stations, they contribute annual fees, and this is the only source of income. We operate completely independently of the state. We do not operate under law. We're not a statutory organization, but a purely voluntary one.
And is it good or bad for the Israeli press?
It's good for the press. Obviously, it seems insufficient and inadequate to the lawmakers in Israel. This is why they've been quite active. Quite apart from the fact that they've all come to realize that any time you attack the media, you're bound to get some very nice headlines. So this is always a bonus for private members when they come up with these initiatives. But I think it's good, and the fact that this kind of a system, in various slight variations, works in 60 democracies around the world today is evidence that this is a good system.
How do you think, Mr. Bachar, gag rules threat free speech in Israel?
Well, gag rules are always a problem. As our British colleagues would no doubt testify, the gag orders and rules in the UK are far more severe and restrictive than they are in Israel. We normally do not complain when it comes to direct and pure military censorship matters. In other words, if state security is at stake and the state can prove that it's at stake, then media would not argue with them. We always try to make sure that we will not be gagged when it comes to covering political matters, issues of corruption in the public service. And for instance, we've just had the law approved saying that we cannot report on the arrest and interrogation of anybody, including public figures, for the first 48 hours after the arrest. And this is a serious impediment that we oppose, but nonetheless this has gone through the Knesset, which means that cases like the case of our former president, Katsav, we would not have been able to report for the first 48 hours.
And Mr. Bachar, do you think that weak journalism in Israel these days necessarily means problem for the Israeli democracy?
Weak journalism, well, a weakened journalist is a problem for any democratic system. You need a robust news media that will be ethical, and this is what we are there to make sure at the Press Council, but you cannot bully the media into submission. And governments have the power to do that. Legislative have the power to do that. They should really be careful when they come to exercise restraints on the news media because, governments of today are the opposition of tomorrow. And they should always be careful that the media can say what needs to be said. Again, this carries an obligation on the journalists to be fair, impartial, and to make sure that they get their facts right.
Mr. Arik Bachar, Secretary General of the Israeli Press Council, thank you.
Thank you.